Dr. Shoshana Bennett. I'm called Dr. Shosh quite a bit. And the reason why I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, it's a mouthful, is because of what
Yeah.
I went through personally. Yeah, well, I was a special education teacher. I never thought
Oh,
I would
nice.
be, yeah, I never thought I'd be a mental health professional. And my husband and I were very much looking forward to our first child. This is back in the 1980s, before computers.
1980s.
Yeah. And when I delivered, I plummeted mental health wise. I experienced a very, very deep, severe, life-threatening, actually, depression. Was in
Mm.
an enormous amount of anxiety, had scary pictures running through my mind. I did not know what hit me, but I was thinking, starting from the
Yeah.
beginning, I didn't deserve to be a mom. I
Mm.
was feeling things and thinking things I didn't think a new mother should ever.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't know what was going on. And of course, you can't look anything up right.
No.
It's not like I could have Googled anything. And
Yeah.
I was just surrounded by criticism and a lot of judgment. Like, Shoshana, what do you
Mm.
do? That you should be, this is supposed to be the happiest time in your life. What are you
Yeah.
fretting about? What are you worrying about? Look at your beautiful daughter. So of course that just reinforced all the horrible,
Makes it worse. Yeah.
exactly. It reinforced all the awful feelings I had been having about myself. I will say I'm very, very fortunate I'm still alive. There were a couple of
Yeah.
times, once after my first was born, and then again when I plummeted a second time
Mhm.
after our second was born. I almost took my life, feeling that my family would really be better off without me. It was
No.
at that time, after the second bout of postpartum depression and anxiety,
Yeah.
that I saw a program on television is what happened. And a woman was
Mhm.
talking about, she was describing what I had been feeling now on and off for years. And
Yeah.
because it took 2.5 years to recover the first time, but I still didn't know what had hit me. Nobody knew,
Yeah.
right? Nobody was diagnosing this stuff back then. So when I
No.
saw her on television, I got both furious at the medical profession and mental health profession. Like, if this is so common, if 1 in 7 of us go through something more severe than the normal baby blues, where was the
Where have
help?
you been?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I started reading everything I could get my hands on that had been translated into English,
Yeah.
and realized that the US was far behind many other
Way
countries.
behind. Yeah.
And I started a support group, the first support group in the United States for postpartum depression and anxiety. And remember, this is just word of mouth. I mean, and
At that point, yeah.
yeah, there was snail mail and there was word of mouth. And I had just posted I was still extremely depressed. I mean, I was still very, very ill. This was my son, second born, was about a year old. Every week, between 5 and 15 women would show up in our living room.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's how the career I now have began. And my
Yeah.
passion is just as strong now as it was then, to educate
Sure.
mental health professionals, medical professionals, and the public, so that they can not only get through, they also can learn how to prevent these things from
Yeah.
happening. They're 100% recoverable. I mean, you can treat them. They're
Sure.
absolutely treatable. And more than ever, help folks learn that they can not only survive these crises, but they can be happier than they've ever been before, frankly. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's the key right there is like understanding it because I mean here we are. Our son is 2.5,
Mm.
and so that puts us, well ahead of when, you had your first child. And I could implant exactly what you said now, that it's like, I mean, I saw it from a data, and my wife is a nurse, and so she kind of understands kind of what, is about to be asked anyway from the health professional end on that. And I mean, I can remember sitting there, checking off things, to go home
Mm-hmm.
with our
Mm-hmm.
firstborn. And they give you this tiny little piece of paper and ask you all these like necessary and valuable questions. But at the same time, it's I think one of them was like, have you in the past, like, I don't know, to 8 hours, 10 hours, some sort of short time frame, like obviously within the same time frame of like, you just had a child. Have you felt like sad or have you cried or, well, yeah, but like, how do you understand that at that moment? But like, you could sense that like that was just like, can you fill this out so we can say that you're okay, or if you're not, then we can give you a phone
Yes.
number, like it was already like the wheel has already begun, that it's like,
Yeah.
this isn't important,
Yes.
but like, or as important as, the physical health of your child. But you're right. I mean,
Well, the good
it's a
news,
conversation that's,
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no,
The
yeah. I mean,
good,
I was just gonna say it's a conversation that's still the same. It feels like, in my
yes,
opinion,
and we still have a long way to go. I mean, the good news is that you were given some kind of a screening,
something. Yeah,
something. What often happens, unfortunately, with those screenings is that there isn't any follow up. I mean, sometimes,
yeah.
moms or dads, because dads can get postpartum depression too, for different
Hmm.
reasons, not for the reproductive hormones, but still sleep deprivation
Sure.
and lots of stress and worry. There's no follow up often after
No.
these screening, which is even worse. I mean, here somebody might say, "Yes, I've been
Sure.
very sad. I've been crying. I've been contemplating. Even I'm hopeless." Some will answer very honestly, "I've been contemplating suicide." If they're that serious, and if there's no
Yeah.
follow up, how horrible is that? Right? It's even
Yeah.
worse than, right? I mean, why be vulnerable and answer those questions honestly if there's not going to be any follow
And
up?
then not do
So,
anything. Yeah.
right. So the best facilities are screening right away, but often it doesn't hit. Postpartum depression can
Yeah.
hit anytime up to the first year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And then still gonna surprise you. I mean, I'm far not experienced at all. Like I said, I mean, I'm 2.5 years
right.
into this, and we decided to have a 10-month-old too. And it's like, it didn't matter what I learned or what we learned as a couple, let alone, I don't, individually, I don't know what goes on through her head every day, but I have some idea. But I can tell you from my end, like, it was like, it didn't matter like what I just learned. You have to reset.
You mean
And so
with
there's
another
like,
child? You
yeah,
become,
I mean, some of it is the same, but like anything you felt like you had under control, it's like, okay, I got it.
listen,
Like, you have a better skill set now,
absolutely.
but
There's certain of the physical things you know how to do. I mean, you know how to change diapers,
yeah,
right? But
right.
whenever another child enters the family, you become a new parent again. And it's tough
All again, yeah,
enough just to be a new parent, even without any perinatal illness on
yeah,
top of it, right? This is the toughest job
yeah,
on the planet. I mean, I work with CEOs, I work with, very top level
yeah,
executives, often emergency care
yeah.
nurses, and they'll say, being a
This is still
parent
the
is
toughest.
the toughest. They
Yeah.
can't wait to go back to work on Monday. So, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Why do you think that is then, that we have such a challenge at the moment of, I don't know what to say, like taking it seriously necessarily, as far as the mental health aspect of a parent, but just in general, like, why is that a challenge of, addressing that? Maybe that's the best way to put it, like addressing the mental health needs of a parent
I'm going to, that's,
afterwards.
yeah, excellent question. I'm going to answer it in a roundabout way.
Sure.
Generally speaking, mixing parenthood with mental health issues, that's not a popular thing to discuss. You're basically
Sure.
saying, because
Sure.
again, we're supposed to be happy. They're our bundle of joy,
Mm.
right? I mean, I remember not too long ago seeing a Hallmark card, and basically, this
Mm.
is for a new, or no, it was for an expectant parent. That's what it was. And it basically said, get ready not to sleep for the next few years. Ha 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 ha. I'm thinking, not if they work with me. They're going to be sleeping, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's almost seen as a joke. Like expect these
Yes.
problems, and yeah, you're going to be miserable, and yeah, it's going to be horrible. first of all, doesn't have to be. We can't
It
avoid
doesn't
all
have to be.
challenges. Obviously, we never know how it's going to
No.
unfold. But mental health, I mean, pediatricians often are even better than the OBs in asking the right questions and assessing and getting treatment, because they know that if the primary caretakers of their patients, in other words, the kids, are not well, their patients, the children, are at high risk
Yeah.
for having problems
Yeah.
themselves. So we're going in
Yeah.
the right direction, but yeah, we have a long way to go. Mm-hmm.
I'm right there with you. Those cliche sayings just drive me nuts sometimes, because it's like, of course you're not going to get sleep, like, because I always joke with them myself, like, to my family, like, you don't sleep well as an adult, and it's because you're still trying to figure out your own schedule, your own routines, what's
Mm-hmm.
going on through your
Mm-hmm.
mind, and so it's just unfair. Simply put, it's unfair to ask a child of any age, to sleep through the night, and it's like, well, what did you expect? Like, they don't have their circadian rhythm set yet. Like, your job is to help them get that, but you're probably not helping your own state of mind if after you put them to bed, like, you're staying up till 12, like, watching Netflix.
No,
It's like,
it's,
the joke's not
yeah,
the joke's not funny anymore. You could have helped your own mental state of
yes,
mind,
yeah,
as well in there. You're right.
yes. What you said was very important, and honestly, the very first, there are a number of things that can feed into a depression, and anxiety and other kinds of disorders, mental health wise.
Yeah,
Sleep is a piece of the
that's the biggest.
wellness puzzle that
Yeah,
can not only avoid, sometimes totally prevent, a postpartum issue, a mental health issue, but at least it can minimize it. And
yeah,
it's the first piece of the puzzle that I always jump into with my new clients.
you have
I
to.
make sure they've got a
Yeah,
wellness strategy, and nighttime sleep. I
yeah.
don't care if they sleep during the day, but nighttime sleep, the brain
Nighttime.
restorative sleep, that can make or break
Yeah,
it. So you're right. It
yeah,
is it is of the utmost importance. So can you make a kid
yeah.
sleep? Well, no, but you
No,
can, yeah,
no.
and
Yeah,
often my clients who are high risk, for instance, they might have had a postpartum depression in the past, they have another child, they know how high risk they are. So that's something that we
yeah,
set up prenatally. There is a plan of action in place. Does it take another adult on duty at night with a kid? Yes. But I want to make sure
yeah.
they get at least a bare minimum of 5 hours uninterrupted to protect their
Yeah,
serotonin level. I mean, that's not enough,
yeah.
obviously, 5 hours.
No, but it's something.
Right. If it's in a row, it truly can help to
Yeah,
protect brain chemistry. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, it's just a point that, I mean, I see time and time again, just in my own life. But then as I, talk to more and more parents, or even just reading it, it's just like, you're focusing on the wrong pieces of the puzzle when it comes to parenting, in my opinion. It's, yes, you want the physical health to be important, but, you get so locked into, a rash on their chin, or a bump on their elbow, or like,
Yeah.
there's things that are important there, and serious, and there's things that it's just like, you just have to kind of let go and trust the process, and really focus on what you're doing, overall, because, at least I can see it and I can feel it in myself, that it's like, I'm not the greatest when it comes to my own mental health, but I feel like I'm stable enough. But it surprises me when I don't want to say lose control, but like lose the emotion all of a sudden. Like, I can watch it like disappear, and I'm like, oh, hold on,
Mm-hmm.
you can't just react in this situation. I can see, at least as a 2.5-year-old, that can see them, not feed off it necessarily all the time, but in a way, yes, like that. It's like, oh, you recognize that mom or
Yeah.
dad are trying to process this moment, and you're gonna have chaotic moments, kid, of course,
And what you're
and
what you're describing is easier said than done, of course. Yeah, it,
then,
it is
yeah,
a
right,
learning curve, but as long as you know what you're shooting for instance, some of the pieces of the
yeah,
wellness puzzle for parents, not only at nighttime sleep, where you can trade off if it's a two-parent family, or at least you can get some help
yeah,
in there, a couple nights a,
some
a
help in there,
week.
yeah,
That I work with single parents as well. Um, you need breaks. So like
Yeah.
a full-time caretaker, in a stay-at-home, for instance, needs at least
Hmm.
3 times a week for at least 2 hours each time. So we're only talking 6 hours, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday from
Yeah.
2 to 4, right? The kid is not, they're not doing chores. They are not taking care of a child, taking care of the home. No, they are just replenishing, because burnout,
Yeah.
depletion can cause depression, right? And
Yeah.
and when we get
Oh
short
yeah.
tempered, like how you were describing a minute ago, like snapping,
Yeah.
reacting, that's often depletion. Not always,
Yeah.
but or it could
Oh
be sleep
yeah.
deprivation, which is also will deplete us.
Yeah.
So
Or both.
yeah, absolutely. So those are needed. You need good emotional support, good physical support.
Yeah.
Who's coming over to help? Who's folding
Yeah.
your laundry or doing some, cleaning, or doing some shopping for you? Who's babysitting for you? You need those times to recharge. And there's so many
Yeah.
myths. If I'm a good parent, I shouldn't need all those things. The self-reliance myth, right? I should be able to do it all myself. And if I love my kid enough, I wouldn't need breaks. I mean, it's so damaging.
Yeah. A lot of those cliches. I just was talking to my mom, who's been a director of a Montessori school like all her life, and so that's embedded. My wife and I were teachers, Montessori teachers too, for 10 years, but a whole different age group, middle school, but not different at all when it comes to a toddler. But that's something that they talked about like all the time. Is that balance, that life balance, and being able to recognize like that need for it, and both the adults and the child.
Exactly. And you want to be able to model that to your kids, right? Like you were saying
Yeah,
before, the kids are watching. Kids are watching us. So if we are not taking
everything.
care of ourselves, you're actually creating
They
another
know.
generation of doing
Right
it,
there. Yeah.
depleting themselves. So take those breaks and
Yeah.
make sure they see you take them, right? Daddy's on duty, mommy's going out for a couple hours. Bye, have a good time, right? And or vice
There's
versa.
different versions of that. I think the one that gets me is like, and maybe that's what we like immediately think of. It's like a break. It's like, it's like a guy's night out, a girl's night out. It's gotta be, it's like, it's just a moment of like, that you're not like you said, like on duty. And
Exactly.
for us, our roles are completely reversed. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
me at home
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell my wife that when she comes, like she's been at work all day, and yes, like of course you miss them, of course you want to be home, all those things are absolutely, you don't have to interact in the same way. And so you get to walk in the door when I've been with them, like all day. And I'm not saying I'm like a superhero at all, but you can feel it, like any at the same moment, like, we could have the same moment happening to us right at the same time. And when she's coming home, she gets to be the calm
Right.
one. But it's like, if it's like 4 or 5
Right.
o'clock, I don't get to have that capacity anymore. So you can see it, but like you're right. I mean, we often just brush it off and be like, no, you're supposed to do this all
Yeah,
by
we're
yourself. But
human.
who did, right?
Well, people did, and the consequences weren't great, right? I mean,
Right, right,
when I
right.
hear a new mom or new dad say, "I love this all the time, every minute," right? And they're doing it by themselves, never taking. What are you taking?
No
Are you
way.
on Valium? I mean, yeah, it's like that's not.
No
Yeah,
way.
that's not real. That's not real. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's extremely. Yes, and we hear
yeah,
these little sayings as you were talking about a minute ago. Place oxygen mask over your own nose and mouth so that before you can help anybody else. But do we
yeah,
actually do it? Right? We don't want to keep it just in the talking. Just in the cliche mode. You really,
yeah,
yeah, it makes a difference. So some kind of exercise, so your brain can be oxygenated, right? Good physically, good
yeah,
mentally. Eating well, and those who are suffering
yeah,
around every 3 hours, nibbling some really good protein with a good carb, and staying really well hydrated. A lot of people really don't put the two together. How they're eating and how they're
no.
feeling. I'm telling you, this is part of the wellness plan. Um,
You just shoving food in and snacking when you can. You call it a meal, and it's like, wait a minute, like, before all this happened, before that children or child came into play, you knew you needed something different. This doesn't
That's
change
right.
it,
And
right?
so I'll hear my clients say, but it's easy. I'll just grab the donut. I'm saying, make it easy to grab some chicken salad. I mean, just as somebody else can prepare it and stick it in to make it just as simple. It doesn't have to be
Just a
complicated. Nobody
simple,
has to be at the stove, cooking all day.
yeah,
Make it simple. Yeah. And actually not enough water can actually increase anxiety. So just really
sure.
simple things
Simple.
can make a big difference. Yeah.
Why do you think that we bypass the fact that like those simple, so there's simple, at least not such as solutions, but simplest way to manage it? Why do you think that just as parents, like they have a we have a hard time thinking of those simple items as necessary tools in our well-being toolbox?
A lot of it is because we haven't given it thought, and any change can feel complicated when it really
Yeah,
doesn't need to be. We think of simple as bad food. Simple equals junk food until we change the mentality and we see, no,
yeah,
yeah, it might take a little bit of prep, or we can delegate some help, right? That friend or that neighbor or that person at church or whoever who's been
yeah,
offering to help, ask them to prepare something simple so you can just grab it out of your refrigerator. Have some
yeah,
cut up apples or whatever. So yeah, I think it's a way of thinking about simple until you realize that healthful can also be
yeah.
simple.
Do you see, like a balance between, men and women as far as the challenges, postpartum, or is there like one, like, kind of like more than the other? If you really like took a magnifying glass, because I'm sure like dads don't talk about this like at all. At least from my viewpoint, like it's not that I'm happy to do it every day. Just I'm like, listen, like I'm like you, like must have been, when your kids were born. It's like, hey, like no one's talking about this at all. But do you see a difference between the two, like as far as their, like the day to day life, as far as managing their mental health, or is there
Boy,
kind of equal playing field if you really were open and honest about how things
I
were?
see a different. There are many ways to answer your question, by the way, and it was
Shooting,
no.
so
I could come at it from a number of different directions. I see a difference between what happens with primary caretaker and the one, if one is doing more of the primary, more of the child care, and the other is earning
yeah,
more sort of away from the home or in the house, but away, from the activity of the children.
it's a good
That
way to look at it.
then there is a difference. The male female
Yeah,
in that way, no, I don't. It's more
no,
primary caretaker as opposed to the one who's
interesting.
bringing in most of the money.
Yeah,
If you want me to answer postpartum depression wise, how does it manifest differently in men, in fathers? I can certainly mention that with women, it's usually happens between 1 and 3 months. The first three months, it typically pops up, and it's more usually more of a down feeling or a numbness, sometimes short temperedness,
yeah,
sometimes anxiety more than a down feeling, what we think of as depression, low self esteem, moms putting themselves down, like my baby doesn't like me, or anybody could do this better than I can. With the dads,
yeah,
it is often delayed. Dads, even when they're primary caretakers, often when it hits them, it tends to be more gradual. So, it could be months down the line. And often, what we see with
yeah.
dads, if they're getting depressed, is they withdraw. Often playing a lot of video games, or if they're out working, they will tend to be workaholics, avoiding interaction.
Yeah.
And with dads, the statistics, instead of around 15% as it is in moms, it's around 10% in dads. If she's depressed, his risk shoots up to about 50%. However, yeah.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting way to look at it. And then so going back to where you like started the answer there, like, that makes a lot of sense that there really is no disparity. It's the fact that who's home, because that's who's having to juggle all
Exactly.
the wave of emotions that a child goes through
That's
just
right.
naturally, and
It's the
should.
type of stress on the individual as opposed to the gender. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can tell you that like in the beginning, at least with our son. I mean, not crossing up my daughter, but like that was the introduction. Like that's the only like vision and emotion and caretaking that
Hmm.
had to happen in the very beginning. You're there, and I could easily see a dad looking at this like, well, I it was so go back a second, like what you said, he was
Hmm.
breastfed, right? So I don't have a role
Hmm.
necessarily
Hmm.
at that point. Like that's like mom's in charge, but for me, like I'm okay with it. Like I'm like, okay, this is our child, our family, and that's just the role they have. But as I was sitting there, like in moments when he was, and I would always sit in the room when that would happen. Or now I'm awake and the room's next door or something.
Yeah.
But I can remember like looking back and going, I could see somebody going, well, I'm useless, or dad. Not anybody, not just somebody, a dad looking at this like, well, I'm useless. Like
Mm.
what am I here for? Like I'm not dad at the moment,
Hmm.
and that's kind of what caught me on the path. And it's what this conversation is interesting to me because it's like I didn't see that like as something that like anybody was talking about. And then I can fully attest to the fact what you just said. It took months down the road, but then it's like then it comes flying
Yes.
in, at me, and that it was like, oh, like buttons are being pushed. I'm like, wait a minute, like I thought that button was fine,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
where did
No,
that
it
come
can
from?
surprise
And
us.
you,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that was tough. I mean, day to day, it's tough, but it's like you can see people get easily wrapped up in, like the phrase that I think I loathe the most is like, I just want what's best for my child because I think in my opinion, it stops you from really paying attention
Yeah.
to what needs to
Yeah.
happen. It's like, I want what's best for my child. Well, they don't want to take a nap
Well,
right now. You want
no.
them to take a nap,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. I can see
Right.
that. That's what stops me at least
Right.
every day.
Okay.
In those moments, I'm like,
However, what's best for your child is a happy daddy,
right,
right?
right.
Seriously. What kids need more than ever are happy, healthy, grounded parents.
As you,
So that is part of the responsibility, especially of the primary caretaker.
yeah,
It's to get regular breaks so you can count on those respite times,
yeah,
right? Because we can hang on. Like I'm sure you remember working outside the home, right? There are a certain time of day, most likely you're off to, right? You get to leave an office or, okay. So we can count.
I don't, not very often, but this day I can feel it. It's like a balance. Like, I have to do everything that I need to for my end of like work. Right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, this is also my day to not do anything,
Yeah.
and it's not my like entire my own day, but throughout the week, there are like bits and pieces you get, but you can feel it that it's just like, I just need to get to that
yeah.
moment. And what are you going to do to reset? This is not a time to do a bunch of things. Like you said, like just go for
No,
a walk,
it,
just
it
sit and play a game on a computer or something
whatever. For
that's
each
not
person, it
brain
might be
functioning to
different.
high extents.
It might be different for everybody,
Right.
right? Right. It's whatever will recharge you. So there isn't
Yeah.
a, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm a big believer in schedules whenever possible. You can't always with what we do,
Yeah.
but when you can count
No.
on that time off, right? When you know that that afternoon at 3 p.m., someone's going to come in, whether it's a
Is
spouse,
yours.
right? Or a babysitter or a parent, or what, and you get to go, you're not going to lose your temper like you would if you didn't know
No.
when that next
It's
time.
coming.
Exactly. So it
Yeah.
really can help keep our heads on straight when we know when that
Yeah.
next break time is coming. Yeah.
Yeah. As you have done the work that you do, and seeing, I'm sure a whole realm of individuals and the way they react. My thing that I always look at when I read anything I read, from an article to a book, to if I got sucked down the rabbit hole of what's this bump on my son. My favorite thing to always look at is like it's like this huge description, and this could be wrong, and this is what could be even worse. That nowhere in there is a sentence that's like, but it may not be your child, or anything along the realm of like your child is basically unique. Like don't don't take this all with some version of like seriousness, but also a
You're
grain of
talking about
salt.
parenting books in
As you
general? Oh my gosh.
anything, when it comes to like as you go through things like that, though, what do you feel is missing? In wording wise, that would be like the biggest breath of fresh air for any parent,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's
Yeah.
a new parent, a parent to a
Yeah.
15-year, whatever. Like, what do you see is missing from the
Well,
conversation
for
most?
starters, there is no one size fits all. So that by itself, when somebody knows that they might do it completely differently than their neighbor, who might be a great parent, but they don't know who's in your house, right? And that's why there's so many
Yeah,
parenting books. This is not instinct. We're not birds, right? The reason why there's so many books and so many opinions, right, is that we have to learn. We
we
can
all have
use
them. Yeah,
our intuition, but that's not instinct,
yeah,
right? So yeah, the do what feels right in your scenario is often missing because
yeah,
people have such strong opinions, right? In
yeah.
all of my books and in my talks, you will hear that same message. I can, when somebody says, well, how did you do it as a parent? I'll say, I'm willing to share with you, but don't over identify,
Yeah,
right, with what I did,
yeah,
because what's happening in your
yeah,
home it's a completely different set of circumstances and
yeah.
situations. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I wasn't looking for like any specific. It's just my own curiosity, because it's like it's almost laughable, at this point in time, that it's like, because like I said, having a whole like a second child, here, that we can't remember what a pediatrician said about this moment and what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And to me, like that's great, because like she's her own child anyway. Yes, there are some things that line up,
Yeah.
that like this is what we
Yeah.
did for him, and
Right.
but like in other
It doesn't
cases, it's
apply,
like
right?
you can't.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so it's
won't
like
mention any particular books that should be used more as doorstops. I will not the titles of those. Um, but yeah, some of them just they create so much anxiety in parents. They're saying, unless you do it this
yeah,
way, the kid's going to end up in jail when please, right? It's
yeah,
horrible. The kind of guilt tripping in
yeah.
some of these books and resources. So yeah.
Or they make you feel like you missed that
Oh my
milestone. It's like,
gosh.
well,
Yes.
they're three now. If you didn't do that before they were
All is
three, like,
lost.
good
You
luck. Like,
exactly right.
it's like,
It's
wait a
that.
minute.
That's absurd. Um, uh, so
Yeah,
yeah, as you're looking, what my advice to parents is always certainly, read or watch or whatever, but don't. Yeah,
go home.
take what
Yeah,
you might want to try as interesting
yeah,
suggestions, but not. That word is in cement, and you must do it that
yeah.
particular way. See what works for you. Parenting is one big experiment. Let's face it. And
It really
good
is.
parents, really
It
good
really
parents,
is.
often haven't a clue what they're doing. Right. We don't. If anybody says, I know exactly how to handle this and I'll do it this way, I worry
No.
about those kids, frankly, because we
Yeah,
experiment. We try it one way, we see how it
yeah,
works, right? We might tweak it a little bit. I think
yeah,
what's missing also is that we need to learn. Boy, I wish somebody had taught me this. We need to learn how to roll with it. We can have an idea of
yeah,
how we want a scenario to right, or a situation to go. But bottom line is we don't know how it's going to unfold, right? There's so much
no.
learning how to, yeah, I don't know how to say it any other way. Just
Just let it move.
don't be rigid.
No.
It's the
Yeah,
flexibility we need to learn, and or else it makes us nuts as parents, and that can be
yeah.
passed along to the
That's a,
kids too. The stress. Mm-hmm.
yeah. We always like to call it like just trust
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah,
process.
you
That,
did
at
say,
the end of the
yeah.
day, you just another like simple cliche saying, but for me, it's like one that just like constantly pops up, and it's like, yep, that makes sense. And lo and behold, the more you try, the more you try to explain all of that, like in the end, it didn't matter, because look, what you were trying to have happen just happened, because you just you just lived, you just let the moment happen. And, we're happy in the sense that this didn't work and you get to find another way to do this, or, this didn't work in that way, but at least it got to a good spot, like some version of it
Yes, and that's
still
a
happens,
very
you
it's a
know?
very healthy perspective. My
Yeah.
clientele, often with very high anxiety, that's where the rigidity, right? I mean, it has
Yeah.
to happen this way or else, right? So I'm helping them as part of
It's not.
the therapeutic
Yeah.
process, helping them learn how to roll with it and trust the process and,
Yeah.
to see how it unfolds.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your insight.
Oh,